Hey, this is Michael Zwick. I am over at Arms of Grace in Burlington, North Carolina, and I've got my new friend Sarah Dove. Sarah is the owner of Arms of Grace, and what they are doing is they are letting children live. They are trying to save children from the horrible crime of abortion. But Sarah, what got you into this?
Well, actually, my testimony, God pretty much told me to do it, so I'm doing it. I am post-abortive myself, and then he led me through a healing journey and volunteering at another pregnancy center, and it was actually on the sidewalk of an abortion clinic that he told me to start one. So
Now, for the people who don't know what post-abortive means, what does that mean?
post-abortive just means that you have gone through the act of an abortion, and it is a part of your past. So it is something that is in your past. That's what that means. It's after an abortion.
Okay, yeah. So, and there have been many women who have been through abortions, and I've heard that there's a lot of women who have been through abortions who are sitting in the church. Is that right?
Oh yeah. So I believe the statistic is 1 in 5. It might be 1 in 4. Women that are active in a church have had an abortion in their life.
1 in 4, and so you actually go to different churches.
Yes.
And you share your testimony. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah. So we are a nonprofit, a 501c3. So of course, most of our donations, most of our volunteer base, most of the people that are involved come from the local church. They don't have to, but that's a great partnership that we have. And one thing that God showed me early on in my journey is that the church needs healing and needs help. They are the people of our community. And so they need aid just as much as the people who aren't in a church building on Sundays. They are our community. So, yeah.
You know, and I'm pro-life. My mom chose life when my dad wanted to have an abortion. So I feel like I have to be pro-life. But I also feel like sometimes it's kind of a fine line.
Right.
Because, you know, so many people talk about grace, 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 grace. And I do believe in the grace of God. I do believe in the goodness of God. And I think a lot of what you guys are talking about is the fact that if you are post-abortive, if you have had an abortion, it is not the unforgivable sin.
Right. No, of course not.
But on the other hand, you still want to warn people that, hey, I've been through this.
Yeah. So the big thing there is you can be forgiven for all sin. And I mean, the reality is our brains as humans, we want to quantify that one sin is worse than another sin, but the Bible clearly tells us that sin is sin. It doesn't matter. In God's eyes, it all warrants death, and it all warrants hell. And Jesus is the one that came to save us from that. So if we repent and we recognize that what I did, what others did, was a sin, the problem is the devil wants to keep us in shame. He wants to keep us in guilt. And so my personal experience is I was just very numb to what even happened. I wouldn't allow myself to go there. I very quickly knew and asked for forgiveness from God because I was a Christian. I grew up in church. That's what I believed. I wasn't living the lifestyle I should have been, but I did know that what I was doing didn't feel right. I just didn't feel I had any other options. And so for me, I was able to repent. I asked for God's forgiveness, and I knew God forgave me, but I didn't want to face any of it. And so I just kept telling myself, well, God forgave me, I'm good, and I just wanted to move on with my life. I didn't want to bring it up. I didn't want to think about it. I didn't want to tell any of my family that I had done that, and I thought it would just go away. But my actions, the things that were happening in my life, the thoughts that went through my head, all of those things were compounding and still impacted from what I had done. And I needed to face them for myself and forgive myself. And that's when abortion recovery came into the fold for me. I just did it because I wanted to volunteer. And they said, well, if you've had an abortion, you need to go through recovery in order to meet with clients and to talk to them about it. And I said, okay, no problem. I know God forgives me. I'm good.
Yeah.
And that was really it. It was something that if I could go back, I wish I didn't do. But I thought I was fine. And then going through the recovery was supernatural, life-changing for me. I mean, it helped me to open up the wounds. It helped me to be vulnerable and process my anger, my thoughts, my feelings, everything, and in a safe environment. And it allowed me to release it for the first time ever. So
Yeah. And so, there are some Christians. First of all, it is legal, and I think most of the states. It's now Roe versus Wade has been overturned, but I've heard that since Roe versus Wade has been overturned, there have actually been more abortions post Roe versus Wade than before.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't really stop anything from happening. All that did was just take it back into the state's hands of what they want to do. And so there's so many, unfortunately, if we don't actually research on a surface level, pro-choice sounds great because everybody wants people to make their own choices. Pro-life sounds great because everybody wants to value life. So we get stuck in between those two things, and those things really aren't opposites. Okay. Life and death is opposite, not choice in life.
Okay.
And I don't know if y'all are gonna be okay with me saying this, but from my perspective, I feel like God is pro-choice and pro-life, and that's a big statement to say, but let me explain it. He created us free will to make our own choices. He also created us to value life and to make the right choices. So the schemes and the manipulations of how this started were to trick us to be in division. As Christians, as people, we feel we have to make a choice on which side we're on. And in reality, they're not even opposites. And we shouldn't be fighting that battle from a standpoint of that wording. So God does not want anyone to kill anyone. It's a commandment. It's not our choice of who lives or who dies, but the world has tricked us into thinking that we have a right to do that in this particular area, and we don't. I mean, that's all there is to it. I did not have a right to do what I did to my 2 children. I just didn't. But when things are legal, that's an option, and that's what we think about. And so it is important what's in our laws and how we think, because I'll tell you, just for North Carolina, it's made a huge difference just what we see. When a woman thinks that is an option, they're going to be debating, is that a good option for me? This person's telling me I should. This person's telling me that. So they're going to be debating on that. Whereas when it went down to 12 weeks, what we see is women come in at 13 weeks and they're like, well, 12 weeks passed, so I've come to terms with I'm going to have to deal with this. Can you help me?
Yeah.
And then we start helping them. So that part is not even a thought. And then as we start helping them, as we give them resources, as we help them with the things they actually needed help with, they realize that the life inside of them is so valuable and that their life is valuable, and then they actually are happy that they weren't allowed to make that choice. They're happy that they get to have their baby or pursue that life, and it's just really, I'm sorry, I got on a soapbox, but it's really just we have to learn to value ourselves in order to even see the child inside of us as valuable.
Yeah, and it is the woman's choice. That's the law.
Right.
It's the woman's choice. So technically, if a woman got pregnant, she could go behind her husband's back, boyfriend's back, whatever, go get the abortion without even telling him.
Yes.
And legally, there's not a lot that we can do about that. Now, that being said, I've heard a lot of women who get an abortion are actually pressured into it.
Oh yeah. Majority is pressure. Majority of them feel they don't have a choice. When it comes to the thought processes, and I can just speak on my own personal experience, but it's also, there's a statistic that 61% of women only speak to their significant other on the decision they're going to make.
Okay.
So if their significant other does not feel they can provide, was not ready for it, has no one to pour into them, has nothing, if they have concerns and questions and they've been brought up to hear that they don't have a voice themselves, if they don't, there's a lot of concerns.
Okay.
And so there's 3 ways that the partner can react to that. He can say, nope, this ain't happening. It could be an extreme of that was my first experience was the gentleman that I got pregnant by was like, nope, he told me it wasn't even his, but here's money